Welcome, everybody. This is episode 4 of DUCKit, where we hosted Ian Ohan from KRUSH Brands. We spoke about how he got to freedom, how he got to building KRUSH, why he believes that it's so important to own every piece of your business end to end, which includes the kitchen, the brand, the customer, the tech, etc., and how that gave him a competitive advantage for today's very difficult times. We spoke about COVID, how he's managing, how he's navigating, and how he sees the future of F&B. Don't forget to subscribe, and thank you for tuning in. Welcome, everybody. This is the 4th episode of DUCKit, where we host Ian Ohan, founder and chief executive at KRUSH Brands. Welcome to the show, Ian.
Thank you for having me.
And as usual on DUCKit, just to remind you, we follow a very simple format. You have the right to duck a question if you're uncomfortable, or please have the courage to answer. Let's get right into it. So, obviously Steve and I know a lot about you. We've been following you for quite some time, a little bit of the kind of groupie feel in terms of how you built the brand of freedom specifically. I feel I know you a little bit in terms of what I read about you. I think Steve as well, but could you please tell us in a nutshell how you got to where you got in life and a little bit of your story and your background?
Okay, I'll try to keep it as brief as possible, but I'm Canadian by background, as you know. We're fellow Canadians. I've been in the region for about 21 years. I started my career in hospitality and then ended up in real estate and finance and hospitality consulting and investment for 15 years. And, in Canada and also in the UAE and in the GCC. And so when I sold my last company in end of 2006 to Jones Lang LaSalle, I had to stay with them for 3 years, which coincided with the Lehman Brothers recession. So I had a choice between staying with them and letting everybody go that we had hired for the last 3 years. And so I sort of said now might be a good time to bow out. So I left JLL in 2009, just after the Lehman Brothers crisis hit, and without really a plan. But I always had this idea of getting back into food and beverage, and so that's what I did. So I came across a franchise in the U.S. at the time called Naked Pizza, which some people know. Yeah. And I took on the franchise for the GCC and other parts of the world as well, and also became a shareholder in the company. Love the founders, still good friends, and we talk all the time. But they were pushed out of their own company, sort of unfortunately about a year after we started here in the UAE. We were very successful, very pleased. Learned a lot from them, continue to learn a lot from them as entrepreneurs. But in 2015, after that company had changed hands several times, it was time to leave. And so we did. And the first thing I did was pick up the phone and call Robbie, one of the 3 partners from Naked. That was it. And I said, Robbie, this is what's happened. And he said, Ian, well, what are you going to do now? And I said, I need a new brand, right? So, we're still the same company. We're still the same people. We do the same things. And so Robbie flew out. We spent a couple weeks together, and Freedom was born. And that's where it came from. So since 2015, we've been Freedom Pizza, but we came out of the delivery business, right? So we were, it wasn't any great stroke of genius that we were in the food delivery business. We were kind of like Domino's reskinned with a better product, healthier product, and a cooler brand, and more relevant sort of brand, more lifestyle focused. But we were very good at delivery then, and and that really became the core of our business. But in 2015, I realized that the tech, prior to that, 2013, I started to realize that tech was super important. And, eventually to the point where I had been through, I'd learned and failed at using third-party systems, and eventually got into a relationship with a company where we kind of saw eye to eye, and we put together this idea for our own digital project. And as we did that, it became very clear that that this wasn't a project. It wasn't something they could just hand over. This was a business in itself. And so we restructured and rethought about the way we could work together. And we set up a company called Big Dwarf in the end. That's another story. But the idea being that, a small small company can make a big impact, right? So, and then we carried on from there, and we've got different brands now, so we can talk through those. But what became clear is that the real part of our business, the thing that makes us very unique is actually our platform. So the brand is great. We love our brands, but the fact that we can do our own online, not just our online, but full digital everything. So, people talk about an app, but it's not just an app. It's, it's a full system that we plug everything into on the back end, on the front. But we can operate brands, we can build brands, we purchase brands, and we do our own delivery, our proprietary delivery. So that our business model is really leveraging that platform with a company that cares about the way they do business, how they do business. The how and the why is important. So I don't know if that's a good enough introduction. Or...
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks. So I think the more I learn about you guys, the more I realize how unique you are. I think when I first heard about you guys, especially the Freedom brand, if we start there, I think the way you built the brand was completely unique in itself. If we just start on that aspect, so the value system that you guys put forth, the way you treat, your stakeholders internally, externally, is completely different than most brands in the region. And then as you start to unravel Freedom, you start to learn more and more about what makes you guys super unique. And you spoke about every piece. So I mean, you own your kitchen, you own your brand, you own your logistics, you own your tech, you own your customers, right? So that's kind of super unique. And why was that fundamental to the business model, especially at that time? Because it was kind of unique.
What was interesting is the connectivity with the customer when you're in the delivery business, if you're a brand, right? And there's a difference between a brand and somebody that makes food.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're in a dark kitchen, if you just want to make food in a sort of a cafeteria style where you can just order food online, then that's a different discussion, but your value add is fairly limited. And that wasn't the business that we were in. We were in a lifestyle brand business, right? It's important to us. The why and the how is almost as important as the what. The what is almost perfunctory. We think our food is good and we work hard at that every day. We think our service is good and we work hard at that every day. But for me, that's perfunctory. We have to be good at those things. I don't think we get points for that. But we also, there's certain things that we care about and the way that we'd like to do business and the reasons we were in business, and those became just as important. So we think it's super important that we are able to communicate with our customers directly on that front. It's really hard to compete on just price and my food's better. I mean, we're very proud of our food, but everybody says their food's better. Everybody says their service is better. But it can't all be true, right? I mean, and frankly, customers, it's not for me to say it. It's for customers to tell us that you're good at those things, right? It's not for me to tell somebody. That's for them to tell us. But what we'd like to do is connect with our customers in a way that is different about things that that we care about, that they might care about, and be able to do something with our business and our platform beyond just selling pizza or poke or salads or whatever the case may be.
But arguably, a lot of people would have argued kind of the opposite in the sense that, fine, okay, on the brand side, I think everyone agrees with you. But if you have kind of an asset-heavy kind of operation where you own every piece end to end the way you guys do, a lot of people would say that it's not necessarily scalable, especially for a smaller company. But your definition of scalability is completely different. And that's what I'm starting to learn more and more, is that the narrative so far of all these kind of aggregators is we bring you scalability. We give you access to all these customers. We do all the heavy lifting. All you got to do is make your food, and that's what you guys are good at. Now, your argument is probably that's not very scalable, and we're seeing it, right? In the economics. But what made you really believe in that business model? Because I look at it and I say, man, are you a restaurant? Are you a tech company? Are you an operations logistics company? Or are you all the above? And that's
I'm so glad you're perplexed because it's true, because we spent a lot of time building out on that platform. And the simple reality is, in my view, that if you can choose to be one or the other, but if you're the other, you work for somebody else. Yeah. Right. And you are certainly, you don't have a direct connection with your customer. You don't have control of the environment. My job's not done until our great food, our healthier, better for you food is at your door in better shape than it was when it left our door. And our driver, and our connectivity is really our driver and our tech, right? Those are our key touch points with our customers. So it's important that we own that entire value chain. It's, a lot of people think, well, it was good when it went out the door. Well, it doesn't matter, because, and if you use a third party and they screw up your order, they don't handle it properly. They don't, there's a lot that goes into good delivery, professional delivery. If you don't do that, then, your customers, you can blame, the third parties, but you gave it to them. You selected them, and I don't believe my job's done until the food arrives correctly and and directly with our customers.
Yeah, so obviously you understand branding and you understand the sum total of all the experiences is what creates a brand and all that stuff. But is it foresight? Like how do you kind of look at the industry? I mean, having seen that Talabat and Zomato and Careem now and Deliveroo, all these guys have been extremely successful in building these platforms and these aggregators, getting thousands and thousands of restaurants on there. Obviously now we know that the economics for the restaurants is super difficult to manage, very difficult to sustain, etc. And you're not in that position today because of that foresight. But how come the industry had the rug pulled out from under them? How come that happened? I mean, if you were able to see it happening and you understood the value of what food experiences should be, how come nobody else saw it? Why are we in this position today?
Well, I'd like to say that I knew what was going to happen, but it wasn't the case. We were in this industry and we wanted to do it better, right?
Yeah.
We understood what our business model and our objectives were. That's why I'm very skeptical of third-party delivery, because I fundamentally don't believe in their business models, because I believe they solved one of three problems. They solve the problem that the customer wants delivery, right, and convenience, right? So, and that's very important. And our industry, like most industries before that have been disrupted, had no idea or didn't care or thought their job was just to make food, right? Which I don't believe that to be the case today, right? They solved one problem for the customer. They don't make money. The restaurants don't make money at this, and they don't make money. Right, so it makes you wonder. So for me, delivery is a cost center. We never viewed it as a profit center. It is a pure cost center. If you look at what Amazon got into Amazon restaurants, right? Yeah. 8 months later, they shut it down, and then they set up a program for their own employees to go away and set up their own businesses for last mile delivery, because last mile delivery is a dog. It is not a profit center. It will never be a profit center without some sort of infrastructure or technological solution that is arguably 5 or 10 years away at best, right? So if you accept that, then that means there's not enough value in the value chain for everybody to play. So the only way that they can, what's interesting is the only way they can actually make money is if they have pricing control, right? And to get price control, you actually have to have an oligopoly or a monopoly, and you can start to see governments around the world. The Amazon deal with Deliveroo was blocked, right? The takeaway deal is in the UK is also being investigated. Yeah. So the interesting conundrum that they're in is they need scale and price to get price control. They need inordinate scale to get price control. And if they get price control, the consumer's going to suffer. And I would argue the consumer's already suffering. And so what's interesting is if you look in the US, people are starting to reject, actually the overall, all of the players together, first of all, they're all still there. So there's still 5 major players in the US, right? They're competing head to head. None of them make money, right? And the governments are cracking down and making their lives more difficult, because, and rightfully so, because the idea of the gig worker is completely unprotected. So their costs are only going up. They haven't managed to win the battle for competition. With the exception of Uber, nobody's gone public, and it doesn't look like anyone's going public for a while. Funding has dried up. That fast money that was in the sector is gone. SoftBank is a cautionary tale today, and probably largely responsible for a lot of this. Yeah. Sorry, SoftBank, but that seems to be the case. That's true. So the question becomes, where do they go from here, right? Yeah. And so what I see now is I see a bunch of drowning swimmers. These are all people that are desperate to survive. The restaurant players are basically cannon fodder. They're collateral damage, because they need the restaurants to get the customers. And let's be honest, they're trying to get the data, right? I mean, that's what this whole battle's about. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question. I can't even remember what it was, but
that's okay.
I was on a flow, so I just kept going. So.
No, go for it, man. So I mean, on that note, right? Like, you're starting to see, the Delivery Hero and Talabat kind of invest in Kitopi and stuff, right? So I think they're trying to fix that problem by actively, going vertically.
Competing with your very customers, right? So Sweetheart Kitchen, so clever. Well, Sweetheart Kitchen is owned by Delivery Hero, exactly. Right? Goes Talabat, Zomato, and KRUSH, right? Yeah. So as a restaurateur, now, I want to be clear. We are not very dependent on any of these guys. So I'm speaking sort of in the sense of an industry,
in a
sort
unique
of view
position
of the world, right? I'm a student of this industry.
Sure.
But like Deliveroo are operating restaurants in the UK. I mean, so it's really, I mean, they're using the data that they have to compete with the very people that are already paying them. So the question becomes, who is your customer?
Exactly.
Right? And you can't, and it can't be everybody, right? You can't say to me, and the issue of the customer data, and it's the one thing our industry doesn't get ever, is that you need to have a direct relationship with your customer. That's the only foil you have against third party, because you've allowed somebody to be between you and your customer, right? So if you don't get the data, then you're dependent. And if you're dependent, you have no leverage or no control, and you're and I think there's this idea, well, we'll get them to lower fees and we'll get them to do all these things. They're going to do what they want because they own your customer.
They control the supply and the demand.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
But as well, and that the only way out is to have an alternative, right? If you offer an alternative to that, and we do it because we want to have a relationship with our customer. That's why we do it. But it's also defensive against these types of players, right? Because so I mean, almost 60% of our orders come in through our own platform, right? Which which gives us leverage. If you don't have that, you'll never have leverage.
And that's the thing, right? So then what's the way to what's the best road to kind of finding a solution today, right? So, I'll be honest with you, most of the time, especially pre-COVID days, I would be a big user of these platforms, right? And under the presumption that they were giving me convenience, right?
Sure.
And then when you reflect a little bit, you start to realize that you're always ordering from the same 4 or 5, 10 restaurants anyway, exactly, right? So the choice of the thousands of choices and the whole user experience and the fun.
If I go on, Zomato, or I mean, I've never heard of 99% of them, and and the thing is, you go on Deliveroo and Uber Eats, all the food looks good. It all looks the same, but it can't all be. So as a customer, I actually find that a bit frustrating. What for us, what we're KRUSH Brands is, and I'm going to use the number 10 because I just kind of like it and it seems about right. It's 10 brands you love, right? Yeah. And we're going to wrap everything under one app, but not in a cafeteria style. Each brand is going to stand alone. You're going to be able to swipe left to right.
It's on identity.
Go from one brand to the next, but you'll have a comment checkout. So the idea is that I can give you 10 things highly curated, and that can change by location, right? You can have different brands in different locations. But the idea, it's from a company that cares, that we have common values, etc. But the idea is these are the 10 brands that you need, highly curated, not 1,000 brands that are meaningless and are just discounting for the sake of it. I get annoyed at the discounting. I know a lot of people dig it, but like as a customer, I find it annoying to try and sift through all this stuff. And I'd rather just have good pricing from the customers. And if you looked at I don't have the exact data, but if you look at the pricing of restaurant menus in the last 24 months, I would argue they're up by at least 10 to 15% on the whole. And it's because of the aggregators. So the more, if customers want to continue to drive up the price of their own food, then God bless them, but it costs money, right? And to deliver costs money. It costs me 20 dirhams to do a delivery, the raw cost of a delivery. So if you factor that in, and that's a very sobering number. Now, I have a different utility value for my drivers. They're not sitting around, sitting on their asses, on the grass smoking all day. My drivers, they work for us. They're all cross-trained, which is an eyesore. As a business owner, it drives me crazy to see that because I find it a bit offensive actually as a customer. But the idea is our guys are cross-trained. They're trained in hygiene. They're trained in safety. They're trained in the stores. And most of our general managers, believe it or not, started as drivers because they know the business from the outside in and they're quite clever. So so we have a different utility value. So that 20 dirhams is our raw cost, but it doesn't account for the additional utility value we get from them.
So when we go back to the solution moving forward, so all these thousands of restaurants that now want to compete, have that kind of independence, gain that relationship with their customers, what's the solution? Is the solution kind of follow the same route you have, own your tech, own your infrastructure, own your operations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Is that the only way? And if that's the only way, I mean, you guys definitely have a head start, but do you not have an opportunity or responsibility as well to take your learnings and give people access to the back end that you have, for example? Is there a way to scale that from that?
Yeah, so I'll start with one thing that we're doing. So part of our business model right now is that we support local chefs in local markets. So we want to have at least 3 local chefs. So by the end of this month, we're going to be announcing our first chef partnership. It's been accelerated because of the current times, and it's a great chef that we know. He's going to be moving into one of our kitchens. He's going to be on our platform, and we're going to be doing his delivery for him, right? So that's part of it. But to your point about scale, how does the average restaurateur deal with this? The first thing is decide what business you're in. Okay, like are you in the delivery business? Because delivery is a completely different business to everything else. And I'll talk a bit further, because I actually believe this isn't just about delivery. This is about being everywhere, because I believe that customers today want what they want, when they want it, how they want it, where they want it, right? Yeah. And so my job as a business person is to be able to provide that. And it's not just delivery. This is drive-through. This is vending machines, that are digitally enabled. This is being able to walk into a restaurant and order the same way I would from home on my app and be recognized, being able to walk out without having to pay, or without the active payment. So, for me, and what glues that all together is, of course, technology. So I don't see this just as delivery versus dine-in. For me, this is technology to give our customers everything they want, wherever they want, and that's only technology can do that. And that's where we're heading as a company. For other companies, the first thing to do is make sure you get your customer data, right? I mean, your job isn't just to make food. If it is, then either decide you're going to become a cafeteria and you're going to, and you have no control over your customer. And that model might have some merit to it. It's not the choice that we would make, because I don't think it's very secure. If you don't control your value chain or your customer, you basically are an employee, right? Yeah. And there might be business models around that. So don't get me wrong, that might also work. And the dark kitchen is the next, delivery aggregator, honeypot that everybody's invested in. And I have some very strong views about that as well. But I think the first thing is to get control. First of all, decide who you are. If delivery is part of your future, then it's not just about being on an app or being, and it's about how you communicate. You then create a program around delivery. It's the menu, how you're doing your packaging, how you're delivering, what messaging you're getting at the door, how you're following up with customers. But the most important thing is to actually have the customer data. And the only way, but you need a place, and you need a place to drive customers to. So you need your own platform, irrespective. And there's lots of third-party platforms out there. They're all different versions of bad. There's a few better than others. But it's very easy to get a platform set up, because you've got to drive traffic to your own platform, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're a brand that people care about, then they're going to be looking for you. Yeah.
But I mean, I'm listening to you speak, Ian, and I can't help but come to the realization that you're an entrepreneur. You're a guy who's easily evolving and innovating as he goes. He's super in touch with his customers, demographic, and how he's serving people. But I don't know what it is, but I feel like every time I speak to a typical F&B guy, he's all about creating a destination and bringing people to his food, and he's all about he's continuously selling this food experience at some location. And I feel like, my whole life, I think like a lot of guys and girls, sorry, but, I've always wanted to be in the F&B business, right? Yeah. I think ever since I was in college and I was a bartender paying my tuition. But at a certain point, I feel like the restaurateur or the F&B guy today, the guy who wants to start his own place, he's living in a very, very different world, right? He's living in a world where convenience is the name of the game, building brands is the name of the game, and that experience does not just sit at a table and 4 chairs, right? So what do you say to a guy who wants to get into the F&B business today, especially in a world or in a city like Dubai, where the aggregators are kind of, and especially the post-COVID era, is going to look very different?
Well, I would say that your business, having a product, the days of putting out your tomatoes and people coming to buy them are over, right? Yeah. So you're not, people go, I'm in the restaurant business, I'm not in the technology business. It's bullshit. I'm in the technology business, I'm in the restaurant business, I'm not in the delivery business. No, you're not, right? Or and I'll talk about your point about experience, because I think it's fascinating. So I believe, and this is my view, is that, so your experience is going to come back into the equation in a big way, I believe. Mm-hmm. And so, for me, there's 3 restaurants in the world, and I'm not going to tell you where they are, where that's the only place I can get that experience, right? And I will go there all day long. You don't have to advertise to me. I will find it, right? And I can't get that experience anywhere else. I can't go anywhere. I can't order from them, because it's about something completely different. So if you have that, you're in a different game, right? Now, having said that, you should still get customer data, right? Sure. Because you want to be able to communicate, but that's those places where experience overrides everything else. that's a very unique position to be in, and it's also a very delicate position because it could easily be taken away, right?
Sure.
So that's one part of experience. I believe that over the last 5 years, we've all been exposed to convenience that we never had before, the delivery and everything. So I think as a society, we've been drunk on convenience. So the idea being that, convenience is more important. Look, I can get it, right? Is it any good? I don't know, but I can get it, right? So that, that was good enough, right? I can get what I want when I want. And so that convenience was more important than anything else. I believe today that experience is starting to come back into the equation. The idea, technology is becoming commoditized and more commoditized. I mean, there's different, there's a lot of technology out there. There's a lot of bad technology, but there's a lot of technology out there. And I believe the idea of putting experience back into the equation is very important, because even if it's digital, right? So I believe you can have a sublime digital experience. Our drivers say something when they deliver to you. They greet you. There's ways that we can infuse experience into the delivery process and through technology. And I use the example of Amazon. Amazon is ruthlessly efficient. It's the German of, they're ruthlessly efficient, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think would anyone look at it and go, "What a wonderful customer experience," right? And it's actually their weakness. Their efficiency is, their strength is also their weakness, because it's very inhuman. I don't think people care about Amazon as a company, in the sense that, like, if you gave me another brand that did it as well or better than they do it, do I care? I mean, Amazon, as long as somebody does it, right? So I think there's this idea of experience is going to come back. We're human beings, we want to care about things, and it's a different model, but it's not at the expense of convenience. Convenience is going to become commoditized, and we're going to go back to experience, whether that's digital, real life, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I've kind of built a career building that narrative as well, by the way, because we've realized that transactional or functional brands eventually are unsustainable. And over time, building that kind of affinity and that relationship with your customers is the only way that you have a sustainable kind of business. So completely agreed down that line. Now, I wanted to get to kind of the circumstances today. The restaurants that were not on the platforms, were not on the platforms because they found a way, or they found a recipe to kind of survive without it. And those that are like flocking to the platforms now are doing it for survival. And a lot of these platforms today, and I think a bunch of conversations, actually the reason we tied up because of this podcast was because me and you shared opinions. You started to share your opinion kind of vocally, and so did I. And I was really kind of struck by this new world where these aggregators, who by the way are not as healthy as they used to be. People have this misconception that during COVID, these guys are growing exponentially and they've never made more money, which is not at all true. It's actually the opposite. And however, the restaurants that have been able to hold their ground for so long are now flocking to them just for a means to keep revenue coming in, so that they don't literally have to go bankrupt or fire everybody. So there's now kind of an abuse happening, right? So these aggregators are in a unique position, and they're looking at it as an opportunity to kind of scale, this endless word of scale.
Well, it's a data grab, right? It's a market share grab, right?
Absolutely. Maybe not a scale in revenue, but a scale in market size. So we're starting to see that a lot, and we're starting to see the true nature, the true colors of these brands, where okay, they know they have the upper hand, they know they can land grab and get everybody on board, and now they're going to start to kind of twist on the economies, right? On the pricing, on the commissions, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where we tied up on LinkedIn and where you made a post. And I think coming out of COVID, on the brand narrative, I really hope, and this is where I'd love to get your personal opinion. I really hope that people start to make conscious decisions and take notes and run tabs on how these brands are acting, because the future of the world post-COVID is going to be a world where consumers are going to have to decide whether or not they will accept these business models, or whether they're going to be able to, I don't want to say boycott, but at least boycott their way towards a more sustainable future, right? So pick brands and buy products and services from brands that see the world a little bit more different. Do you think, we were talking about, VCs kind of running low, scalability and sustainability being a challenge. Now that their true nature is coming out, do you actually think that that industry is at risk? And do you think that you're going to see all kinds of, I guess, consolidation to an extent, and maybe even a complete shift in consumer behavior? Do you think that's where we're going? It might take 5 to 10 years, but do you think that's what's happening?
I think we were there anyway. Like, I don't think COVID. So, and you know, my comments about COVID is that they should be. What I find discouraging is, you know, during COVID, I mean, everybody's suffering, right? But they not only are they not helping the restaurants, you know, who, you know, they're charging 35% to, you know, but they're being very disingenuous in their communication, and they're suggesting to customers that they're helping restaurants, and they're not. You know, they're doing anything but helping restaurants. And their greatest fear is that customers know, because, you know, they're very clever. If you actually look at the way they set things up, they're like, they charge us 35%, right? But then they charge you, you know, between 7 and 11 dirhams, which, by the way, I still predict will be 20 dirhams before long. But the customer thinks that they're picking up the tab. They're not. So what they don't like is people actually understanding, the customer actually understanding the business model, right? And because of that, I think, so this is sort of one positive thing. There's a couple of positive things coming out of COVID. One is that people are becoming more aware of what's happening and what they're charging, right? Customers, I mean. Number two, I think a lot of the restaurants have woken up and are, you know, and yes, they can go on now. I don't think it's going to make much difference. If you haven't been on, I mean, you're a little bit late to the party, but it's going to make you aware of what's out there and what's happening and how this whole system works. And it might start you thinking. But I think that this was happening. So this is, you know, my complaint is about their behavior during this pandemic, particularly, you know, suggesting that they're saviors for this industry, and they're nothing but bad for our industry, and they've done nothing to help any restaurants other than to help themselves. So, you know, and what people need to understand is they want customers. You know, they don't care about the restaurants. They want your customers, and, you know, and that's what they're after. And that's what I find interesting. Our industry doesn't even realize that they don't even know the rules of the game. The rules of the game are you need to actually have a relationship with your customer, right? So what everybody's, you know, so I think they should be dropping their fees during the pandemic just to, I mean, take some of the pain for everybody else as well, you know. But they were in trouble before. I mean, let's not be, you know, the funding has dried up, you know, after the WeWork debacle, after the, you know, I mean, you know,
the house of cards, fell.
Yeah, I mean, SoftBank's in a world of pain, right? I mean, you know, Uber is, you know, probably the lucky ones, you know, that got out at all, right? You know, and the rest it's failure to launch, right? And so when you look at the industry, you look at governments starting, you know, like think about the UK, which is a really interesting place, right? So you've got these big players, you know, vying for the UK, which is a huge market, right? So, you know, takeaway out of Amsterdam, you know, just made a move and they acquired Just Eat from the UK, but that's under investigation. Yeah. Deliveroo's deal with Amazon was blocked for antitrust, and you know, it's under investigation. But what's interesting is if you can't take market control, what value do you have when you're losing money already? So, you know, there's a weird, it's a three-legged stool, right? Or four-legged, like or two-legged stool. How, you know, if you don't make money today and you're telling investors, I need scale to make money, right? To exercise price control, and governments won't let you do it, right? You know, for antitrust, it creates a very strange dynamic. And that's what's going on now in the UK. Who's going to invest in Deliveroo today? You know, given that they've been blocked, so they can't consolidate, right? So it's a very weird, it's a very strange time in our existence. So the simple answer is there is consolidation. It's been happening for the last 18 months and accelerating. I mean, Uber Eats sold out to, you know, Swiggy in India, which is an insane deal, to be honest. Like bad deal for, you know, for Swiggy, I would argue. You know, but there's this mass consolidation. They're pulling out. They're retrenching. But to me, they're all on fumes. I mean, Deliveroo are arguably, you know, operating on cash fumes right now because they didn't get their deal through. Now, you know, there's a plus and a minus to that. I don't want to see businesses go under, you know. But at the same time, you know, the antitrust is setting in. But I mean, they probably have very little access to cash, right? Uber Eats, you know, when they did their IPO, they claimed how fast Uber Eats was growing, but what they didn't, you know, what was in the fine print is as the bigger it grows, the more money they lose. You know, so, you know, they're running out of places to go, and they're running out of money. So one of the choices, you consolidate, right? Go out of business, right? Or raise more money. And, you know, the last one, which was the one they've been using to date, is really not very available.
Yeah, I mean, Steve and I, you know, we've been in the ride-hailing business for quite some time. Before Kareem, also I was at Rocket Internet with the taxi. So I've been in the ride-hailing business, which has a lot of similarities in terms of the business models. Looking back and reflecting now, hindsight is always 20/20, definitely. But looking at the kind of fragility of it all is increasingly obvious, especially now that the money markets and capital access has kind of disappeared. I think.
I'll tell you just an anecdote. So I was speaking at the Restaurant Investment Forum in Amsterdam, and I was on a panel of like tech, but weirdly I was the only, and these are with big companies and stuff, but I was the only person that actually had our own tech platform. So everybody was talking about tech, right? But what was interesting is this is the first time I've been at one of these events, and all the big players, usually they're whining and moaning about the big, the fees that are being charged and all that kind of stuff. This time they were all worried about. They're like, well, if they're out of business, who's gonna be delivering our food? Which is fascinating. It's a bizarre switch. But the tone was they were worried that somebody wouldn't be there to deliver the food, but they didn't like the way it was being done. It reminds me of that I don't know if you've ever seen A Few Good Men.
Yeah.
That speech from Jack Nicholson. He says, you need me on that wall. He goes, but then don't question the way I do it. It's all that kind of stuff. If you're not going to do it for yourself, then you have to accept the way it's given to you, right? Or if you're not going to find an alternative.
Absolutely. So in your opinion, then, if that trajectory continues, then we're going to see a huge shift eventually. And is that shift a shift where the operators or the restaurateurs themselves start to do more of what you're doing? Is that what you kind of expect, or do you expect the markets to come together?
Their business model, this model does not work, right? The model that they're presenting to the market does not work, right? It's a mathematical business fact. It does not work, right?
Yeah.
So the question is, why are they doing it, right? Because the answer is they're evolving, right? Because the idea is if I have the data, then I'm worth something, right? But they're evolving. They're just being forced to evolve very quickly now. I have no doubt in my mind. If I was Deliveroo, and I'm sure this is what's on their idea, is I'd become the biggest restaurant operator in the world.
Yeah.
But do it quickly, because you can't half do it because you're going to piss everybody off. But you have to keep. If you think about it, they're into dark kitchens now. They're now running, like Sweetheart Kitchen so they're moving through the value chain. But this is a company that claims that they're a tech company, right? So why are you opening? You're in real estate now, right? Now you're in operations, now you're supplying packaging, what are you? You're a shapeshifter. So this is why I think they're dangerous, to our industry. And our industry is I think, largely misinformed or unaware of actually the game. The game is much bigger than them. They see it as a relationship between the restaurant industry and them. And they're not even players in the game, right? This is what I find interesting. And so or they're going to go out of business, right? But they're going to have to change their business model, and it's not necessarily going to be in the restaurant industry's favor. What better game? Look at Amazon. Amazon bankrupted all the malls, and then they bought the malls, right? And now they're using them as distribution hubs, right? So there's this game is going on that's much bigger than I have a restaurant, right? And I don't like paying lots of fees. This is a much bigger game, and it's, I think, only the people that really understand it are going to survive, or you're going to create other business models are going to be created, from the smaller player, which is probably already happening.
And is there a world where the restaurants come together themselves and they don't unionize, but they kind of build some sort of collaborative platform? You don't think that's ever going to happen?
I don't think we're smart enough. And I say that
respectfully. You say respectfully.
We're too diverse an industry.
No, I understand.
And the
absolutely.
knowledge base is so varied, and I don't even think the most senior people really have a full grasp of it, because they would have done things differently already. If they had it. So I just think we're so scattered. There's no way the industry could agree on anything. And it's happening here. They're trying to do things. But it's people have asked me, they said, why don't you white label what you've done and do it for the industry? And I said, because the industry won't help itself. I would actually do it if I believe that the industry would, but the industry won't help itself. So why should I be the one trying to help people that that don't want to be helped or don't know how to be helped?
I completely understand. When it comes to kind of how you guys are dealing with COVID, just to get to kind of understanding the future of KRUSH Brands, I'm a big kind of supporter of I think your three keywords are health, sustainability, and local. That's kind of like how you anchor your positioning as a group. how do you guys do delivery different from a logistics perspective when we compare to these big aggregators? How do you guys make it more sustainable? How do you guys keep it more local? And how do you take the health of your teams kind of at the forefront of how you operate? I mean, arguably these are really difficult and challenging times, exposing your front end kind of warriors to the risks that we live in today. How are you doing that differently in terms of especially the drivers, I guess?
I mean, the first thing is we give them all the protective equipment. The second thing is we make sure that they're all, like, our stores look like like surgeries right now. I mean, like, if we were always we didn't have to be here HACCP certified, but we're fully HACCP certified. Our drivers are HACCP trained. So we've always been very vigilant, but we're really, really vigilant now. I mean, if you go into our stores, it literally, we're going to be doing, but it's our stores look like surgeries. I mean, they're spotless. I mean, they were always clean, but it's the guys are wearing gaiters. Everything is so we're doing our best to take care of that. Yeah. The drivers are obviously we're very concerned. If anyone has any signs, we quarantine them immediately, right? We now have greater access to testing, which is important. We're trying to get all of our staff tested, actually, but we're just we're trying to figure that out. It's becoming more and more available, but it's still obviously being prioritized for higher risk areas. But yeah, we're basically keeping them really safe. There's contactless delivery. The other thing is it's different, but our drivers and other people's drivers, our drivers are allowed into our stores, right? So our drivers, sanitize between every delivery. When I see those guys sitting around on the streets, I'm actually just wondering, what are they doing to sanitize? And where are they doing it, right? So our drivers are fully trained. They work for us, right? We have the ability to fully train them on all the the right things and enforce it, and and also give them the tools they need to be as safe as possible. But beyond, but other third-party delivery, they don't have the benefit of that. They got nowhere to go. They got nowhere to wash their hands. They've got they don't have their training. I don't know how much training they receive, to be honest. So I think that's what's different about our guys, but it's a big concern. There's no question it's a big concern for us.
In terms of kind of the discussions we've been having internally for at least about 5-6 months, we've been trying to push forward this whole thinking of real value creation, right? And we believe that the reason a lot of the brands today aren't really sustainable or aren't doing good in the world is because they really only have one stakeholder that they care about, and that's the shareholders, right? This whole mindset that the business model is purely and ultimately only built to build shareholder value is kind of where the things kind of fall apart nowadays. If that's the only people that you care about, arguably then everything else falls apart longer term, right? So when we look, the Amazons and we look at the Ubers and look at that stuff, at the end of the day, the wealth or the benefits or the positive that they brought to the world was really to the shareholder, but everybody else longer term, as it unraveled, as the true colors came out, you kind of realize that there was no real value creation outside of the shareholders, even if the narrative was. Yeah, exactly.
Coming to your town, right?
Exactly.
But all the money's going right out of your town, right?
Exactly, and that's what it's starting to look more and more like. And the CEO of Delivery Hero, and you touched on it a little bit earlier. Last week or the week before, he said, he was boasting, and they were so proud that during COVID, we're taking care of restaurants, and now more than ever, we're simplifying and accelerating the speed at which restaurants can join our platform,
right.
and we're going to pay them back their own money at shorter intervals, twice a month instead of once a month. I don't remember what it was.
By the way, another insane thing, because they're actually using the cash flow. Can you imagine the cash they're sitting on? Nobody thinks about that either. Deliveroo pay every 2 weeks, right? That's a lot of cash they're sitting on and they're making money from, right?
And they can play with that, right? And like a restaurant can't play with that, right? Because their terms with their suppliers are completely different, right? Exactly.
So some businesses operate just for that cash flow, right? They make their profit on that cash flow.
Absolutely. So what happened to we talk about this, Steve and I, a lot. When you're growing up and you're looking, and you're in school, you're in college, and you idolize people. You want to be like all these tech entrepreneurs. You want to work for maybe Delivery Hero if you're in Berlin. You want to work for Facebook. You want to work for Uber. You want to work, you want to work for these huge tech companies. But the underbelly of the beast, of all of these beasts, is starting to show, and that lack of empathy is kind of clear, right? Like they are only there for themselves and only for the value creation of their shareholders. Now, I feel like there is zero accountability. What is the role of consumers, but also what is the role of governments? We're seeing it in San Francisco, putting caps on commissions. We're seeing it in different parts of the world. We're seeing, things kind of changed a little bit. We're seeing regulation in Dubai when it came to Uber and Careem and stuff in terms of pricing, in terms of stuff like that. How do we manage this world? How do we control them? How do we make sure that they actually do benefit and less harm that they're actually doing? And how do we make sure that people can see through the bullshit, especially the kids that are growing up? Guys like me, arguably, 5-10 years ago, I was idolizing these guys. And now I'm looking at them and saying, wow, I am super offended. I got fucked. I looked up this guy. It turns out he's kind of a monster. So how do we do this? Yeah, I drank the Kool-Aid for such a long time, and I benefited from that as well, right? So I'm not going to be kind of hypocritical about it too. Like I rode the wave, I helped create the brands, I drove the narrative, I sold the story to Steve when he joined Kareem. I sold him the Kool-Aid. So at the end of the day, what's the role of government? What's the role of consumers? And how can the guys who are growing up now kind of see the world differently?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that it's easy to demonize them, but they're clever, right? They're smart at what they're there's no doubt these are very smart people, very driven, right? And there's a lot at stake, right? And they've actually created something that consumers really want. So you can't fully fault everything that they're doing, right?
No,
the question is what's fair, right? And what works in this business. And so I'm a free market guy. I believe in free market. However, I also believe in antitrust, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at Delivery Hero, they're interesting because they've retreated to the markets that have less antitrust regulation. If you actually look at it, right? So, you could, it makes perfect sense, right? But I don't think people are looking at it that way. They retracted from all the westernized, I'll call them westernized, more, legislative markets where they knew, like the UK, where they knew they'd be blocked eventually, right? So that's a brilliant move. So as business people, I give them top marks, right? And they genuinely solved the problem, right? They solved the problem, with consumers want convenience, right? So they did that. But I think there's two things that they haven't solved. Employees need to be protected always, just because you're a gig economy worker. And I think there's ways to do that. I think there's lots of ways to do that, where you can be a gig economy worker, but still protected. And you see that with the COVID-19. I mean, I loved, Uber, Dara saying, the government needs to bail out our people that we don't even consider employees, and we're not going to get benefits, but the government should be awful worried about them, right? But I mean, that takes huge balls. I mean, to do that. Like at first I found it really offensive, and then I thought, wow, look at the balls on this guy, right? I mean, he said we're not going to take care of them because they're not our employees, but the government should, right? But it's exposed all the cracks of that. So I think employees need to be looked after, the same way they would be looked after in any other market. So governments need to catch up, right? The second thing is you look at legislation around, the antitrust, right? If consumers are suffering, then it needs to be looked into. I mean, these guys are being investigated around the world. Like in New York, I mean, what's part of one of New York's biggest tourism assets? It's the restaurant business.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, people go to New York just to eat, right? The beautiful restaurants, but they're being destroyed. So there's a legislative commission that's been set up to investigate, these practices. And I don't think that they need a check. The point isn't to make them go away. The point is to check them, because they're just going to keep moving, and governments are going to be behind, right? So the government's got to catch up and get them under control. And if they can compete, then great. But it's going to force them to compete on a more fair basis, because right now they've jumped through loopholes that existed. They're very clever. But when that all comes back into play, the question is what business model works then, because your current business model doesn't work now and your costs are going up.
But then arguably, if you have maturity in the government and in legislation and antitrust, then arguably operationally these businesses are going to be a bit more controlled, and hence the bottom impact on on consumers is higher prices, right?
Yeah, that's 100%.
Right. So inevitably, the only way to manage these guys is to kind of make things more expensive.
Well, it's already happening though, and it's actually amazing. Like in the U.S. today, I mean, we spend our summers in the States, and I paid $19 for a delivery once. I mean, like the cost of delivery is insane, right? Like the average delivery cost is about $7, right? $7 to $9, right? Can you imagine? Like the average lunch ticket is $11, right? So it's actually reached the point where consumers are going, I'm not that price sensitive, but like when I get a $19 delivery charge, I'm like, WTF? I mean, I'm like, it's offensive, right? And it was, so I started, I think consumers are starting to wake up to that. And I think people are going to start going back to restaurants. Like I genuinely, because it doesn't make, like, when I saw that bill, I'm like, I will never do that again. I'll get in the car and drive 5 minutes and, and get it, right? Not because it's the money, but because it's offensive to me, right? I'd rather give it to some guy on the street than, for that, right? So, I think people are going to start going back. And if you think about it, things like drive-throughs, I mean, the drive-through was the first delivery, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people that was the beginning of delivery, and it's still very popular. I think people are going to start going back to restaurants. I was in London a little while ago before the pandemic, and I was in the city, and it was around noon, and I was shocked at the number. First of all, I was surprised that there were hardly any delivery couriers around. I was right in the the financial district, but and I wish I took a picture of it. 70% of the people had a bag in their hand. Because why would you order, and spend all that money when you could go downstairs and get a breath of fresh air?
Pick it up.
And 70% of the people actually were out either, and some of them were eating while they were walking. I think we're going to swing back a little bit, because delivery is great when it's subsidized by SoftBank, right? Or National, right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, investors, for subsidizing. If delivery is $1 or $2, who cares, right? If delivery is $9, $7, $5. I mean, do you want to do that every day? I mean,
and arguably the reason all these guys have scaled so well is because they've been subsidies.
100%. SoftBank has paid for most of our food over the last 3 years, right? I mean, I'm thinking there's a lot of other ones that are doing the same.
So the disruption is a free ticket rather than an actual tech disruption, right? I think, absolutely. No, I'm the first to say it. I'm the first to say it.
Right? I mean, I'll just spend money. So I mean, why wouldn't you, order in if it was $1 or $2, right? Why wouldn't you? But when it's $5, $7, or $19, I wrote a big article on LinkedIn. I'm predicting that delivery here will go up to 20 dirhams. And it's already going up. Uber in September raised their price. They'd call it distance pricing and all this stuff. This is just another way to charge more. But it's, what used to cost 7 dirhams now, if I want to order from Motor City, which is 5 minutes away from me, it's 11 dirhams for delivery, right? Yeah. So this is just going to carry on. I mean, the price of delivery is going to go up, and restaurants in the U.S. are allowed to have different pricing online than they are in their own restaurants. Versus here they try and tell you can't, although everybody's doing it. But the price of the consumer, it's going to become painful to the point where customers are going to it's going to change their behavior.
And if we look forward, right? So at the end of the day, what we're seeing is that sustainability is really coming into question, as in terms of sustainability of business models, but also sustainability of what's good for us, right? What's good for consumers, what's good for the planet, et cetera, right? So Steve and I are big kind of advocates of the roles of brands, right? So sure, I believe in my government, whether it's in Canada or the UAE, and sure, I believe in kind of, the law and government and regulation and stuff like that. But I inherently, at the end of the day, really believe that brands can sway populations way more than, and have way more impact in narratives and what's right and what's wrong even than pretty much anyone else, right? So what do you think the role of brands are moving forward? I mean, look at what happened with COVID, and because I don't think brands understand their responsibility, right? I think you get it, but.
So we started our environmental journey. We've always been, pretty sort of thoughtful about it. I don't want to hang us out as a green company. We're on an environmental journey, right? Yeah. We just want to be a better company overall, and we can make a big impact in the environment, in the way we behave. And so our environmental journey started after I realized that I figured everybody had a drawer full of straws and plastic cutlery that we were putting out. And I calculated that one year we'd put out, like 500,000 or 600,000, plastic straws and cutlery, which were probably sitting in drawers, because I had a drawer full of it too.
I do too.
And so it occurred to me, well, let's just stop that, right? And everyone's like, well, you can't, you have to do that. I'm like, well, why? And so I actually, I looked online, and I came across a program in California from an NGO called Lonely Whale Foundation that was actually, it's set up by Adrian Grenier, the guy from Entourage, the actor, right? Yeah. So I love the campaign, and they chose the straw because it's an easy place everybody can start to have a conversation. We can all make that change in our lives. It's easier, right? Yeah. So I love the campaign. So we did a whole campaign around it. And so we cut it out completely. We had huge, like everybody, all of our customers loved it, and other people who weren't our customers loved it. We then challenged our industry peers to do it, and we're just this little company, right? But 55 companies followed suit because they saw how happy everybody was about it, right? So I think it was funny because people are like, oh, they're not going to like it. I'm like, well, what's it like? It's plastic that's sitting in a drawer, right? It's garbage, basically, right? And so that was an easy change for us. But imagine, I mean, now it'd be millions of pieces of cutlery and stuff that we're no longer using. Our Wildflower brand is all of our packaging is PLA, which is a cane-based. It looks like plastic, but if you put it in the oven at 40 degrees Celsius, it'll melt, right? Because it's biodegradable, it's organic. Everything that we do for Wildflower, it's all it's not only biodegradable, but it's compostable. So the things that we're doing, we're working on an electric delivery fleet, right? Because the cost gap is just there now. The technology is where it needs to be. And so we're just trying to figure out that cost gap, and we're working with the government and other entities on that. Sure. We're right now, even our petrol-based engines, we're working with a company that have an additive, and we're testing that right now. That'll increase the range of our bikes by 30%, and we're just testing that now. I mean, again, it's a small thing. It's a very inexpensive additive, but if we can do that, and then if, let's say everybody else did that, I mean, that's a big impact, right? So it's not just about what your company can do. It's about what can you inspire others to do. If you can demonstrate it and it's effective and people like it, then others will follow, right? And that's so we have a very strong. I mean, we have a strong responsibility to use what we're doing, and to do better. And it's not only it's better for our environment, it's better for our customers. We feel good about what we do, right? Better about how we conduct ourselves, and economically, you said earlier that it's about shareholder value and creating shareholder value. But for me, I'm the only shareholder, but creating shareholder value for me is about this is creating shareholder value because we're creating deeper ties with our customers, right? We're creating more inherent value in the brand, which isn't cash, it's not money, on the bottom line directly, but it's a brand and value creator that I believe will pay dividends one day. That's not why I do it. I do it because it just makes sense, right? It's the thoughtful thing to do, and it doesn't cost us very much money to do most of these things.
Awesome. Ian, we've been talking for an hour. I'm conscious of time. I think you and me and could probably talk for another couple of hours. I really appreciate how transparent you've been, how forthcoming you've been. I really appreciate your views on how you build your business and what you stand for. I think us at DUCKLIFE, we're completely on the same page, and that's why we wanted to have you on. Thanks a lot. I really, really appreciate your time. Hopefully we'll have you back on post-COVID and we can see what the world looks like then. Have another episode. And use all the equipment that we invested so much into.
Us as well. I've got a whole podcasting studio in my office. So.
Amazing. I'd love to have you back. I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. I'm just going to close it off there. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. That was your fourth episode of DUCKit. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much, Ian.
Lucky number 4. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Take it easy.
Cheers.
Thanks. Ciao, ciao. Bye.